We have finished the 8 intrusive circumstances. Today, we continue to study the 8 incompatible propensities. The 8 incompatible propensities that leave no freedom to practice the Dharma. If a practitioner has any one of the 8 incompatible propensities, they will have no freedom to practice the Dharma, and the sprout of the 3 kinds of enlightenment will wither. So they will be cut off from the family of enlightenment. That's why they are called incompatible propensities, which implies cutting off the opportunity, to some extent. The 8 incompatible propensities are worse than the 8 intrusive circumstances, as the latter ones only disturb our practice occasionally, but the former can stop our practice and push us away from the path to liberation. Therefore, we must examine whether we have such unfavorable circumstances and propensities. If yes, we must eradicate them immediately by applying their remedies. Meanwhile, we should pray to the Guru and the 3 jewels, hoping we won't encounter any of them in the future. And even if we do, they won't last too long. Some people find themselves in a very dreadful situation where, despite their strong intention to practice the Dharma, they struggle to do so successfully. They may even renounce their families to become ordained. However, when karmic obstacles arise, when their afflictions become overwhelming, or when unfavorable conditions appear, they find themselves unable to face them. In the end, they get entangled once again in the worldly life. Therefore, it is crucial to always pray to the Guru and the 3 jewels while studying the Dharma. This is because the power and the blessing of the Guru and the 3 jewels are inconceivable. Problems for which we find no solutions on our own can without doubt be solved by the power of the Guru and the 3 jewels. Therefore, wherever you are and whatever you do, make sure you never part from the luminosity of the Guru and the 3 jewels. This is what a real practitioner should be doing. Please do bear it in mind. Now let's explain the 8 incompatible propensities in greater detail. 1. Being bound by one's ties. Those who are deeply entangled in their worldly responsibilities such as wealth, pleasures, children, and relatives are too consumed by these demanding pursuits to find time for practicing the Dharma. Even if such people occasionally want to practice, they soon get so diverted by external factors that they cannot put the practice into action. From youth to old age, many people have never had any freedom to practice the Dharma. As Mipham Rinpoche said in The Just King, when they are children, their parents take charge. In their youth, their friends take control. When they have grown old, they are under the power of their children. Fools are never independent. I really like this verse. Many people are like this. When they are children, they are disciplined and controlled by their parents every day. And meanwhile, they are obsessed with toys. Even though the toys, like everything else, are just illusions in nature, these children believe the toys inherently exist and spend time playing with them, so they don't have the freedom to practice the Dharma. When they are young, these people are tightly bound to family, relatives, and friends, so they can hardly spare any time for practice. When they are old, they are bound to children and have to do whatever the children tell them, so they have no freedom to practice the Dharma. As such, many people live their lives under the control of others, so they don't really have the opportunity to practice the Dharma. Why did many past eminent masters choose to forego this life and leave all worldly matters behind? It is because they deeply felt that if their lives were bound by their ties, their practice would accomplish absolutely nothing. Many people are especially obsessed with relationships, social status, and appearance, which brings a multitude of harms to their lives, let alone the possibility of properly practicing the Dharma. It is hardly possible for one to attain transcendental achievement while still clinging tightly to worldly pursuits. Wen Tingyun, a Chinese lyricist of the Tang dynasty, exclaimed, "Descendant of the noble family, do not emulate those sentimental men. Since ancient times, being sentimental hurts a young man." However, many people don't understand this. Upon seeing what they do in life, I cannot help but generate compassion. It is truly sad they are so attached to these things, which are just illusions without inherent existence. If a person tightly grasps everything in this life, they will certainly have no time to practice the Dharma, and worse yet, they may even die for the pursuit of trivial gains. Like the old saying goes, humans die for wealth, birds die for food. For petty profit, some people intrigue and fight against others. For a dead worm, birds peck each other and fight hard. From a Buddhist perspective, what these beings are pursuing is of little benefit and worth. However, as a Chinese proverb goes, the player sees less clearly than the bystander. Their grip is so tight that they can do nothing but struggle in the whirlpool of suffering. Remedy. As practitioners, we should first examine whether we have generated renunciation of this life. Many mind-training PIF instructions, such as Gateway to Training the Mind, emphasize that the most important thing is to renounce this life. If a person, whether a monastic or householder, can renounce everything in this life, their practice can definitely result in success. In contrast, if a person is tightly bound to wealth and fame in this life, even if they appear to practice well, they may not attain substantial achievement in their practice. Therefore, practitioners should reflect on the defects of samsara and develop authentic renunciation. 2. Flagrant depravity. Some individuals possess no shred of humanity, and their character is so morally corrupt that they are incapable of bettering their conduct. A Buddhist should first of all be a moral person. Only on the basis of being a morally good person can one become a good practitioner. It is unrealistic for those with depraved nature and notorious deeds to establish vast Dharma activities. When a person practices well, they are certainly a morally good person, because when Dharma infiltrates their mind, they will part from the deeds of an immoral person. In contrast, if an immoral person doesn't give up any of their wrongdoings, will they become a great realized Dharma practitioner? I am afraid not. As the great masters of the past said, the abilities of a disciple can be improved, but their poor character is truly hard to alter. It is not a big problem if a disciple is dim-witted and lacks intelligence, because as long as they are willing to study the Dharma, under the guidance of their teacher, they can gradually become a wise person. But if a disciple has a depraved character, then even a qualified teacher would find it very difficult to set the disciple on the right path. They might get a bit better for 1 or 2 days under the guidance of a teacher, but they will return to their previous state sometime later. As the old saying goes, the rivers and mountains may change, but not one's basic nature. When Geshe Potoa was approached by a person asking to be a disciple, he would first examine the person's basic character. If the person was depraved, however intelligent they might be, Potoa wouldn't accept them. If the person had good character, even if they were a bit dim-witted, Potoa would accept them. The great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche constantly emphasized the importance of a person's character in many of his works, including the Song of Victory and the Nectar Drops of Advice. Through daily interaction with others, I have truly developed unwavering trust and appreciation for this instruction from the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche and those of other past eminent masters. Sakya Pandita says in The Treasury of Good Advice, "Try as one might to reform bad people, they simply do not become good-natured. Even if one vigorously washes coal, it simply cannot be made white." Even if a depraved person encounters a Buddha-like master with great qualities, compassion, and wisdom, they will barely receive any transmission of realization from the Guru's mind. Instead, they may go against the Dharma. Therefore, such a person has no opportunity to practice the Dharma, and they are in a state without freedoms and advantages. Remedy. Some eminent masters say that it can be quite challenging to find a remedy for a depraved character. However, a few individuals used to be very bad, but due to their virtuous roots and good dispositions, and with the help of the Guru's guidance and fellow practitioners' persuasion, they became kind people. Such cases have occasionally happened. Therefore, we should carefully examine whether we possess good moral characters or not. An ordinary person tends to believe that they are morally good. Even the worst person thinks that they are good. But in fact, if everyone thinks you are bad, perhaps you are indeed a morally bad person. On the other hand, if most people believe you are a good person, except for a few, then maybe those few simply don't like you. Therefore, we shouldn't be too sure of ourselves, thinking I am no different from Bodhisattva Manjushri and someone is just jealous of me. I am actually a very good person. We shouldn't think this way. Every one of us inevitably has faults, so in the process of pursuing Dharma, we must correct our faults with the help of the Guru and our Dharma friends. A wise person always examines their own faults, whereas a fool only checks others' faults. Therefore, if we want to be a real practitioner, we must have good characters. This applies when we practice the Dharma as well as when we accept disciples. 3. Lack of dissatisfaction with samsara. A person who remains completely unaffected by the horror of lower rebirths and the torments in samsara, as well as the sufferings of their current life, lacks any motivation to free themselves from samsara. As a result, they have no justification for engaging in Dharma practice. Once, a Dharma friend called me from America, saying, "We're living a happy life here. San Francisco is so beautiful. Boston is splendid." I replied jokingly, "You'd better not get attached to these things. Otherwise, your renunciation may not arise for even a split second." Indeed, when everything goes well in life, good health, social status, career, and family, many people feel the world is beautiful, not knowing that all conditioned things are suffering. These people regard samsara as a heaven instead of a house on fire. Due to their lack of renunciation, they don't have any opportunity to enter the Dharma. Especially for those who lack understanding of the law of karma, they feel nothing when hearing of the sufferings in the lower realms of hell beings, hungry ghosts, and animals. Venerable Longchen Nyingtik says in Finding Rest in the Nature of the Mind, "If now you cannot bear the least discomfort, how can you withstand the dreadful sorrows of existence? If, when it's explained, you are not moved to sadness, your heart inert like iron or a piece of stone, it's clear you have no mind at all." Therefore, such people have cut themselves off from the opportunity of attaining liberation. Without renunciation, can higher states of realization arise within the practitioners? It seems highly unlikely. Many individuals claim renunciation is only for Theravada practitioners. I am a tantric practitioner of Mahayana Buddhism, so I don't need to practice the renunciation of the basic vehicle. Their statement is not appropriate. Why? Because without the foundation of renunciation, the skyscraper of higher spiritual states lacks stability. The Buddha says in the Sutra of 10 Chakras of Ksitigarbha, "If you cannot drink a river dry, how can you drink the ocean dry? If you do not study the basic vehicle, how can you study the great vehicle?" Many practitioners fail to accord due importance to the practice of renunciation, the observance of the monastic or lay precepts. Merely hearing about them gives them a headache, and they show little interest. They fancy themselves to be great yogis, abiding in primordial wisdom and having no attachments. Yet, they almost resemble the villains in movies, obsessed with vices and uninterested in virtues, and they reject laws with the intent to commit wrongdoing. This is not right. Establishing a foundation through the observance of individual liberation precepts or the cultivation of renunciation is of utmost importance. practitioners should reflect on their resolve to be liberated from the cyclic existence of samsara. If such motivation has not yet arisen, then the path of their Dharma practice is not yet set. Unfortunately, many people these days are excessively preoccupied with this life. They are uninterested in generating renunciation, let alone comprehending the profound teachings of the Vajrayana and Great Perfection. Thus, an ordinary practitioner should refrain from boasting and self-righteousness. Without acceptance of the fundamental teachings, the view, meditation, action, and fruition in the higher teachings will remain elusive. I hope you will remember each and every instruction from Patrul Rinpoche in this text. Some Sangha members at Larangar have pledged to memorize the text of the words of my perfect teacher, and I hope they can persevere in accomplishing this task. If you can memorize it by heart, I guarantee you will become a good practitioner. If you can memorize the text, you will learn all the instructions by heart. Merely reading through the text quickly will not lead to a deep understanding of its profound instructions. I often think how wonderful it would be if I could always remember each and every sentence in this text. 20 years ago, when I first listened to the teaching of the words of my perfect teacher, I had this thought, and now I still share the same thought. The Vajra words in the text are incomparable to any worldly words. I came across a book recently by a learned author in which he says we should read at least 10 minutes per day to boost our wisdom. Otherwise, our minds become stagnant. If a worldly person feels like doing this, I hope you will do the same with the extraordinary transcendental text of the words of my perfect teacher. If you read and remember a little bit of this text every day, in the long run you will develop an in-depth understanding of the content. The so-called practice doesn't refer to reaching the culmination in one step. It requires long-term sustained practice, which can be seen in those senior practitioners who succeed in their practice. 4. Complete absence of faith. Lacking any faith, either in the true Dharma or in the teacher, completely blocks access to the teachings and prevents one from entering the path of liberation. Having no faith is reflected in a person's behaviors. For example, a person lacking faith may see a copy of the words of my perfect teacher as no different from a newspaper, or this person gives just a perfunctory reception to a teacher who has given them the highest teaching. Faith and wisdom are vital in the course of our practice. Without wisdom, a person cannot realize the reality of all phenomena. Without faith, a person cannot really enter the Dharma. Nagarjuna says in the Precious Garland, due to having faith one relies on the practices, due to having wisdom one truly knows. Of these two, wisdom is the chief, faith is its prerequisite. With faith, we will then pursue the Dharma. With wisdom, we will realize the no-self of the individual, the no-self of phenomena, or the teaching of the 4 Dharma seals. Between faith and wisdom, wisdom is the primary one because it enables us to realize the relative truth and the ultimate truth of all phenomena. Nevertheless, to attain such a realization, we need the impetus of faith. As said in the Mahayana Uttaratantra Shastra, this truth of the self-sprung ones is to be realized through faith. The orb of the sun blazes with light, but is not seen by the blind. The realization of the supreme ultimate truth of emptiness is also through faith. If you have no faith, you won't enter the Dharma. But if you have the same uncontrived faith as some senior practitioners do, even if you don't necessarily have the wisdom to assimilate the nature of reality, you will never turn back from the light of the Dharma. If a person has faith in their guru, after following the guru for 5 years, they will still be with the guru 10 years later. Even if the person receives criticism from the guru amid praises at times and encounters many challenges, they will always overcome those challenges. In comparison, if a person has no faith in their guru, imagine a situation where the guru makes a negative comment about their cooking. They might retort, "Huh? I don't cook well? Fine, you just find someone else to cook." Then they might pack their bag and leave. Having faith is indeed crucial. A practitioner shouldn't be too petty when following a guru or serving the Sangha. It is not good to immediately leave the Sangha just because of a few negative comments. The world we are living in is called the Saha world, or the universe of endurance, which, unlike the Buddha field of land of great bliss, is full of disputes and competition. Thus, we have to practice forbearance. When someone lacking tolerance receives just a mild negative comment from a fellow Sangha member, they will refuse to talk to that person anymore, or even worse, they will stop going to the Dharma Center. Some volunteers are like this. When someone criticizes their work, they quit volunteering, hand the job over to others, and leave the Sangha. Such a person is to be pitied. Those who have succeeded in volunteer work or practice definitely encounter many obstacles and difficulties. The reason they succeed in the end is because they have endured all hardships. For example, the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche had to face misunderstandings or even baseless slanders when accepting disciples. Establishing the Dharma Center, propagating the Dharma, and benefiting all beings. Nevertheless, as long as Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche found nothing wrong with his principles and direction, he wouldn't concern himself with these challenges and difficulties that come his way. Therefore, it is extremely important for all of us to have strong patience when studying or propagating the Dharma. Patience is also a sign of faith. As said in a great treatise on Nagarjuna's precious garland, not parting from the Dharma and the teacher is a sign of faith. Therefore, a faithful disciple is best advised not to leave the teacher and the Dharma. If a person follows one Dharma teaching today, but loses faith tomorrow and sends back the Dharma book and then goes to another Dharma center and keeps repeating this vicious circle again and again, in the end, this person gains nothing, and all this is in vain. Therefore, it is very important to follow a teacher for a long time and to delve deeply into the teaching. Delving deeply into the teaching doesn't mean, for example, that you only study the Amitabha Sutra and nothing else. Instead, it means you shouldn't shift your primary practices and lineages. Otherwise, something like this will happen. You've chosen to follow a teacher, and it took you a long time to finally learn the sadhana of his lineage. Then you meet another teacher, and you say to yourself, "What a solemn and nice master. I have great faith in him, even with my eyes closed. I have to prostrate before him today and take my refuge. I will pray to him, and he is my forever protector." However, 1 or 2 years later, you move to another protector. This is not good. 5. Taking pleasure in bad actions. Those who derive enjoyment from engaging in harmful or negative behaviors and who lack the ability to control their thoughts, speech, and actions are completely devoid of any noble qualities and have strayed from the path of Dharma. Perhaps it is due to the karma of previous lives that someone shows little interest in virtues and develops great passion toward vices. This propensity is hard to find a remedy for. Khenpo Navwang Palzang says, in a guide to the words of my perfect teacher, for evil conduct, there is no distinct remedy. Such a person is really bad. He lacks interest in doing good and instead engages in all kinds of wrongdoings, including cybercrime, gambling, drinking, smoking, killing, or even taking drugs. How wretched they are. Sakya Pandita's Treasury of Good Advice has a chapter on an examination of bad conduct, which covers many bad actions one should refrain from doing. Some people take pleasure in bad actions due to their own karmas, so despite all attempts, they cannot be tamed in this life. As Sakya Pandita says, even in the forest, malicious people deteriorate. Even in the city, noble people remain serene. Even if a malicious person retreats in a quiet forest, he will remain rude and bad-tempered. He may say he wants to have a retreat practice and contact nobody, but once he is in contact with another person, he will behave as if he would devour that person alive. Even if he manages to stay in a quiet place for 10,000 years, he still cannot soften into a gentle and kind person. By contrast, a noble person remains gentle and kind, even if he lives in a crowded town. Such a person is like a steed that remains docile, even amidst hustle and bustle. Some morally corrupt individuals seem to lack any sense of virtue. They display a capacity, interest, or passion for committing negative deeds while showing no interest in doing good. As stated in Maitreya's ornament of the Mahayana Sutras, such individuals are lacking the potential. Some cannot but consistently follow evil ways. Others have completely destroyed virtuous ways. Some have no merit that is consistent with liberation, have inferior virtue, or are deprived of the cause. Those people who only think of wrongdoings and take pleasure in bad actions are devoid of any virtue. So, they are cut off from the opportunity of attaining liberation and deprived of the cause. According to Mipham Rinpoche's explanation, lacking the potential doesn't mean they are permanently deprived of the potential. It means they are unlikely to develop the path to liberation now, as if they had no potential. These people are thus described in negative terms. Therefore, this refers to the fact that such people are very far away from liberation, but it doesn't mean they will never get liberated. Otherwise, this would imply they don't have Buddha nature, which would be wrong. Remedy: those who take pleasure in bad actions are hard to tame and help, even if countless Buddhas and qualified teachers were to appear in front of them. Is there any remedy for such individuals? Khenpo Nawang Pelzang says no. I myself don't know any remedy for them either. Whatever you tell them, the words just go in one ear and out the other, and they still believe what they like is the best. In such cases, instructions from a qualified teacher are of no use to them. Dharma books don't capture their interest. Therefore, it is really hard to tame such individuals. If we are reborn like them, we will definitely have no capacity to pursue the Dharma. Therefore, we won't have the freedoms for the Dharma. 6. Lack of interest in the Dharma. Those without virtuous qualities and appreciation of the authentic Dharma lack interest in the Dharma, similar to a dog's lack of interest in eating grass or a cow's lack of interest in gnawing on a bone. When they hear the teacher talk about topics such as hearing, contemplating, meditation, liberating lives, and others, they become utterly disinterested. Without enthusiasm for the Dharma, they will never cultivate the corresponding qualities within their minds. The 5th incompatible propensity is about having pleasure in bad actions, whereas this one is about having no interest in good actions. Of course, we are not talking about non-Buddhists here. Among Buddhists, some will be very happy when receiving a Dharma book, as if they receive a wish-fulfilling jewel. But some others appear indifferent, which is reflected in their facial expression. The indifferent people may say, "Fine, just put the book over there." These indifferent Buddhists can hardly develop any faith and wisdom in their minds, even if they live to be 100 years old. The Dhammapada says, "Better it is to live one day virtuous and meditative than to live 100 years immortal and uncontrolled." Some individuals live up to 100 years but are obscured by wrong views and take immortal actions. As a result, they cannot develop true wisdom. Comparing to them, it's better that one lives for only one day but has accepted true wisdom wholeheartedly. In this day and age, There are countless people who live long lives yet muddle along without a meaningful life purpose. The lives of such individuals revolve around eating, sleeping, and socializing. They continually die and are reborn in samsara, never seeking liberation. How pitiful! If we are the same as them, our minds are also deviating from the Dharma, and we won't have the opportunity to practice. Even if we manage to practice, we won't develop any qualities in our minds, because all qualities and states of realization rely on faith and devotion. This is very important. Let's take Tantric teachings as an example. If you believe that Tantric teachings encompass the sublime essence of all teachings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and are extremely rare and precious to listen to, such veneration will definitely bring change in your mind stream through the lineage master's blessings. In contrast, if you only regard Tantric teachings as something ordinary, you may receive no benefit from them. This applies not only to Dharma teachings, but also to worldly training. If you are not interested in the teacher's lectures, you will simply sit idle in class and learn nothing. Remedy: you should first reflect on your interest in the Dharma. If your interest is not strong, you should by all means generate interest in the great qualities of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and the Guru. If you genuinely cannot develop interest, at least acknowledge that the teaching is great. Yesterday, a lay practitioner told me, "I cannot generate faith in Vajrayana. What should I do?" I told him to read the legends of the great Mahasiddhas in Vajrayana Buddhism and Dorje Dechen Lingpa's Journey to the Land of Padmasambhava. A few Dharma students followed my advice and read the books. They exclaimed, "Wow, so amazing! These masters are incredible." I replied, "If your praise for Vajrayana and the Tantric masters is genuine and not just pretending, and you truly think it is so incredible, this means your faith has arisen. Gradually, your state of realization will appear." Some people cannot generate faith in the qualities of the Dharma, but if they read masters' biographies and learn more about their stories, gradually they will generate admiration and revamp their thoughts. Otherwise, if they just dump into their minds the mass of worldly information obtained from television, newspapers, and social media, it will bring no meaning to their lives, not just in this life, but in future lives as well. 7. Heedlessness of the vows. If a person enters the basic vehicle but then breaks the pratimoksha vows, or if a person embarks on the Mahayana path but then loses the commitment to bodhicitta, this person will have no choice but to end up in the lower realms. They will have no chance to practice the Dharma and escape from those states. Those who break vows suffer in this life and future lives and will encounter obstacles to the attainment of Buddhahood. As said in the 50 verses of Samanera, breaking vows brings suffering and hinders the attainment of Buddhahood. Therefore, it is crucial to uphold even a single vow or more. After receiving one's vows, a Buddhist should commit to upholding those vows. If not, one's mind will easily resonate with unwholesome Dharma. Ordinary people don't like to be constrained. They feel happy when exempt from any constraints. However, such freedom cannot help a Buddhist develop great qualities. The Mahayana Sutra of Mental Contemplation during earlier births says, "To enter the ocean of the Dharma, having faith is the root. To cross the river of birth and death, upholding vows is the raft." Without upholding the vows of pratimoksha, precepts of individual liberation, and the vows of bodhicitta, a Buddhist cannot attain the qualities of sutrayana. Without such qualities, there is no way for the Buddhist to further unveil the extraordinary higher state of Vajrayana. Therefore, if a Buddhist breaks these two kinds of vows, fails to make proper repentance, and doesn't retake the vows, they won't have the freedom to practice the Dharma. Remedy: it says in a guide to the words of my perfect teacher, "Better to regret greatly your broken vows than to be puffed up with pride about perfect observance. In the best case, when you take vows and keep them without breaking them, you raise the victory banner of the Buddha and tear down the battle standard of Mara. But failing that, should you happen to break any vows, proper repentance also hoists the victory banner of the teachings and tears down Mara's standard. So it is important not to leave breaches unconfessed, thinking that they do not matter. Many eminent masters and lay practitioners in this world have broken neither the vows of pratimoksha nor the vows of bodhisattvas. Such people are as pure as a lotus that rises out of the mud without being stained. They will directly be reborn in a pure realm. Other people break their vows due to various reasons, but they regret and confess the breaches, and later receive the vows again. Such people are also regarded as holders of the vows. If a Buddhist breaks vows and never applies a remedy and retakes the vows, they won't have real freedom to practice the Dharma. 8. Heedlessness of the samayas. This one is about upholding the tantric vows. Once a Buddhist receives empowerment, they are committed to uphold the samaya vows. After entering Vajrayana, if they break their samaya commitments to their Vajra Guru, endowed with 3 types of kindness, and their Vajra sisters and brothers, they will bring harm to themselves and others and cut off the opportunity to attain enlightenment. There are many specific samaya vows. Some teachings say that seeing rocks and dirt as something inherently existent is a breach of samaya vows. But some Dharma masters argue that since all ordinary people have grasping, if it were a breach, there wouldn't be any pure samaya holders among ordinary practitioners. Therefore, the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche and other masters say that, loosely speaking, clinging to the inherent existence of phenomena is not a breach of samaya. However, you definitely break the samaya vows if you have a major conflict with the Vajra Guru and do not repent afterwards, or if you have disputes with Vajra sisters and brothers and treat them as enemies. Therefore, please pay extra attention to this. There are numerous samaya vows in Vajrayana, including the samayas of body, speech, and mind, the 27 root samayas, the 14 root downfalls, and so forth. Particularly, each time the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche bestowed empowerment or gave tantric teachings, he would emphasize the importance of not having disputes or conflicts with one's Vajra brothers and sisters. Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche exhorted us, if you have a dispute or conflict with a Vajra fellow or you stop talking to each other, you have to repent before midnight. If, for example, you don't talk to your Vajra fellow due to a dispute, then you are not allowed to enter the Vajrayana mandala or to listen to tantric teachings with others. Soon, I am going to teach the aspirational prayer of the Great Perfection at Larungar. If there are Sangha members who turn their backs toward each other and are really on bad terms, they better confess in front of another person like a Dharma master and sort things out before listening to the teaching. If not, these two people are forbidden from entering the Vajrayana mandala or other tantric venues. I have to reiterate this today because very soon the teaching will start. Given the large number of listeners, I wonder whether there are Sangha members in such disharmony. I do believe Vajra sisters and brothers at Larungar get along well with each other, so there shouldn't be any disharmony, but still, sometimes it is hard to say. I hope this time there won't be any Sangha members on bad terms during my tantric teaching. If there are, as soon as the situation is discovered, either I stop the teaching or the relevant listeners leave the Dharma hall immediately. It will definitely be handled this way. Of course, there is no need to ask anyone else whether you have serious problems with another person. You yourself know best regarding this issue. If you are on bad terms with someone, you should talk to the person saying, "Are we not talking to each other? When I see you, You always seem to dodge me. The other day when I was walking up, you happened to walk down. But the moment you saw me, you switched to another path. Do you have anything against me? If so, can we still talk to each other in the coming days? After Khenpo's tantric teaching is over, we will see what to do next. But now let's talk. Otherwise, we cannot listen to the teaching. Indeed, the great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche always emphasized that people who were in disharmony with the teacher and with the Vajra sisters and brothers were not allowed to attend tantric teachings. It has always been like this. Please do remember this. These are Longchenpa's 8 propensities that lead one astray from the Dharma and extinguish the lamp of liberation. If you have one or more of these 8 incompatible propensities, you are cut off from the opportunity for liberation. Therefore, practitioners with right views must carefully examine themselves and make sure these propensities don't remain in them. If you can do this, you will be happy in all your actions. You will be happy in this life, and you will be free from any potential harm in the lives yet to come. The Buddha says, "Lead a righteous life, lead not a base life. The righteous live happily both in this world and the next." The Lotus Sutra says, "Throughout the long night, they will gain peace and rest, and will enjoy many benefits." Therefore, a good practitioner worries about nothing, which is reflected through their facial expression or speech, whereas a bad practitioner is constantly in a state of anxiety, pain, and sadness. Therefore, we should strive to resonate with the nectar-like teachings of the Buddha. By doing so, we will live a happy, carefree, and meaningful life.